It may only be September, but that is close enough to spooky season for me. Until Halloween, for a brief history, we'll be discussing famous haunting and spooky houses, culminating with the story behind the home from the Conjuring, which will be part of my second annual Hell House collab on October 31st. The happenings at the home we are discussing in this episode were reported to be so alarming that the family called in the famed demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren. This is a brief history of the Smurl Haunting. As always, this episode of A Brief History may contain graphic content and is not suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Today, we are building the double-block home of the Smurl family in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, based off exterior reference photos. The Smurl family, consisting of Jack, his wife Janet, and their 4 daughters, Dawn, Heather, and eventually the twins, Karen and Shannon, who had not yet been born at the time, moved into a double-block home on Chase Street in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, in 1973 after Hurricane Agnes caused flooding to their home in Wilkes-Barre, though some sources say the family moved in as late as 1974. In the second side of the double-block home, Jack's parents Mary and John moved in. The family were close and also devout Catholics who enjoyed being in close proximity to one another. The family also owned a German Shepherd named Simon. Beginning almost immediately into moving in, the Smurl family began to notice odd occurrences around the house that they were working on renovating and updating, though the first few instances didn't seem to be anything of importance, and instead were simple things that the family just explained away as odd. The toilets around the home began flushing. Electrical items began simply shutting down for no discernible reason, and the family frequently heard knocking on doors and walls, typically in a pattern of 3. Despite these things being explained away as plumbing issues or electrical problems, those interested in the study of paranormal may recognize that issues with electricity is frequently cited as a sign of haunting, as well as the pattern of 3, which is generally thought to be a mocking of the Holy Trinity. As time went on, the happenings became more intense, with a foul-smelling odor appearing randomly throughout the house, with the Smurl family trying to explain it away by simply hoping dead animals had become lodged into the walls of their home. Old wall stains that had been covered by fresh coats of paint began seeping out into the open. Tools went missing only to reappear in different places. And despite having been a previously happy and comfortable family, they were soon struggling with what was going on. Their finances were not in the best place. Jack's mother Mary suffered a heart attack in the home, and the activity was continuing to grow. Both Mary and Janet would later report that they frequently heard voices that sounded like one another, with Mary hearing what she thought was Janet and Jack screaming violently at each other, while Janet claimed to have heard her mother-in-law calling her for help. The horrors grew as auditory hallucinations turned into the family seeing things inside the home, most notably a large black mass that would travel slowly through the duplex. Even more disturbingly, Janet claimed to have been visited at night by what she referred to as a malevolent force, a force that she claimed had molested her in her sleep, leaving her fearing to close her eyes at night. After the incident with Janet, the entity in the home only became more violent. One of the Smurl daughters was cut by a falling light fixture. The family's German Shepherd Simon was thrown violently against the wall. Another one of their daughters was thrown down a flight of stairs. And Janet even claims to have been picked up and hurled across the room by an unknown force. And the patriarch, Jack, claimed that a succubus had entered the living room and raped him, with the neighbors verifying that something had happened in the home because they could hear Jack screaming. Finally, in 1986, nearly 13 years after the incidents had begun occurring, the family were finally at their end and opened up a desperate plea to the public for help with the strange incidents in their home, after being rejected for an exorcism by the Catholic Church. Of course, in the 1980s, the best to have on the job would be Ed and Lorraine Warren, a famed pair of demonologists who took a vested interest in the Smurl family and visited the home. After the Warrens' investigation, Ed Warren stated he believed the home contained a very powerful demon, and Ed's wife, Lorraine, a self-proclaimed clairvoyant, would tell the Smurls that they were living with 4 separate entities: a harmless elderly woman, a potentially violent young girl, a man who had died in the home after suffering, and a demon that had been using the other 3 spirits to demean and destroy the Smurl family. After the notoriety brought in by the Warrens, the Smurl family was thrust into a media circus, with news vans and conspiracy nuts hanging outside of the home at all hours of the day. The Catholic Church finally responded and sent 3 separate priests to bless the house, with seemingly no improvement. They eventually sent another priest who moved into the house for a handful of days but left after experiencing nothing. Between the strange and violent occurrences in their home and the now constant media attention, the Smurl family was broken and decided the best thing to do would be to move out of the Chase Street duplex in 1987. But unfortunately, leaving the home where the occurrences began did nothing to quell them. Eventually, in 1989, the church sanctioned an exorcism of their new home, and all strange occurrences have stopped. Since the reporting of the haunting, many people, including priests and journalists, have been highly critical of the Smurl story, especially due to the fact that in 1986, amidst what the family were calling violent attacks, they found the time to author a book about their story, along with the Warrens and writer Robert Curran. And of course, the involvement of the Warrens at all had many people raising their eyebrows, especially Paul Kurtz, who published a case study of the Smurl haunting for a publication called The Skeptical Inquirer. Kurtz would later say, "Of course, special cause for suspicion in this affair was the presence of Ed and Lorraine Warren. They have been involved in many demon possession cases, including the Amityville Horror, which has been admitted by its perpetrators to have been a hoax, although the Warrens still maintain that it was genuine." What are your thoughts on the Smurl haunting, or hauntings in general? Are you a believer? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for joining me for the first episode of A Brief History Spooky Season. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Brief History haunting videos up until Halloween. Thank you to my patrons who support this series. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.